Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be a book review slash more informal discussion for another work of classic literature. In today's video, we are going to be talking about The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This book is a chunker. It is over 1,000 pages, and it's a book that I have been meaning to read for literally years. I continually put it off because I was scared by the length, but I finally finished reading it, and I have to say I am so glad that I got to this at last. This book was so enjoyable, and I want to talk to you all about it today. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be a formal book review. I'm kind of just going to be sharing some of my off-the-cuff thoughts about the plot, the characters, what I liked, what I disliked, and then if you have read this book, do go to the comment section and let me know what you thought. I would really like to hear some of your opinions on this book. First, let's talk about the plot. The Count of Monte Cristo is a classic from the mid-1800s, and it is following our main character, Edmond Dantes. At the beginning of the book, Edmond's life is going pretty well. He is a successful sailor about to be promoted to captain. He gets along well with his boss. He has a dad who loves him, and he is about to get married to his love, Mercedes. However, that all comes crashing down when he is framed for being a Bonapartist traitor. The beginning of this book takes place in Napoleonic era France, and so when the king comes back into power, Dantes is framed for being on the side of the exiled Emperor Napoleon and sent to prison, where his loved ones presume him dead. Many years later, Dantes is able to escape from prison, and using the alias, the Count of Monte Cristo, he enters Parisian high society with an elaborate plan to get revenge on the people who were responsible for his false imprisonment. This is just a sprawling, epic story with so much, obviously, revenge. It is a story of revenge. It also has romance, murder, friendship. It just hits on so many things. And I think one thing that I want to say about this book is I think a lot of people who maybe don't read classics a lot, they think that 1800s classics are going to be very pretentious and stuck up and trying too hard to be deep. But that's really not true, because books like The Count of Monte Cristo, they were meant to entertain the masses. These books were published serially, and this book originally was published in installments over the course of about 2 years. So it was sort of like the 1800s equivalent of tuning in every week to watch the new episode of your favorite television show. This book was meant to be consumed by the everyday reader. It was meant to entertain first and foremost, and so it has a wonderfully twisty, turny plot. There's murder, romance, infidelity, people faking their own death. You know, it is so dramatic. It is like an extremely well-written soap opera. And don't go into this book thinking that it's going to be pretentious or hard to understand, because it's not. It is just meant to be entertainment, pure and simple, and by God does it deliver. This book, I was enthralled by the end. I gasped, I clutched my heart. It was just so entertaining. And though this book is very large, I did not think it was hard to read at all. I was able to follow what was going on a majority of the time. There were maybe some references or words that went over my head, but the plot is pretty easy to follow in my opinion. So don't let this book's size scare you. It is a really entertaining, propulsive read. And I know if I was a lady in the mid-1800s reading The Count of Monte Cristo every time the new installment came out, I would have been talking with my friends about it. You know, be like, OMG, Harriet, did you see what the Count did this week? It was just really, really good. Yeah, some of these 1800s classics, it was a very different experience from what you would think of nowadays with reading a book. Because they were published serially, it was sort of like watching the new episode of your favorite TV show, waiting for your favorite fanfic to be updated. That was more so the experience that people were getting. When I finished this book, I told my mom that I really, really wanted someone to make a mini-series of this book because I think it would be so good as an adaptation, but I think you really need to do a mini-series because there is just no way that you can get all the plots and subplots in this book into a movie. Like, if you were going to adapt this into a movie, you would really have to take some creative liberties, but I think in a mini-series you could really do it. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out they actually are making a mini-series of The Count of Monte Cristo. I believe they're filming it right now. Sam Claflin is going to star as Dantes / the Count. He's not exactly who I was picturing in my mind while reading this book, but he's a good actor, so I'm sure he'll do a great job. I hope that mini-series ends up airing somewhere in the United States, because when it comes out, I am going to want to watch it. I think this would be an amazing mini-series. Now let's talk a little bit about the characters in this book. Obviously, Edmond Dantes / the Count of Monte Cristo is the main character. He also goes by many other aliases, which I will not spoil for you. Edmond was a really compelling main character. I sympathized with him because of these unfair things that happened to him. And he is on this journey where, as he is pursuing his revenge, he believes that what he is doing is morally right, that he is holding these people accountable for the wrongs they have done him in a way that God would want. But the deeper he goes into his revenge, the more he starts to question about if he is a good person, if he is doing the right thing. And let me tell you, what I love about Edmond Dantes is that he is a messy bitch who lives for drama. Like, some of the stuff that he pulls in his elaborate schemes, I was dying. I was so entertained by him and his messiness. We stan. He is an icon. This book has so many characters in it, but I have to say, even though there are a lot of names and you meet a lot of people, I feel like they are all pretty distinct, so I never was struggling to remember who was who. Every character has their own distinct role and personality. I think Vfor actually was a really interesting character to me because even though he does these reprehensible things, he still did have some positive qualities. I did genuinely believe that he really loved his daughter, and so that made him interesting to me. At the end of the book, where you see him get his comeuppance, on one hand, I spent the whole book wanting to see him pay for what he did, but I also felt bad for him at the same time. And so I found him a really interesting character because I did have these conflicting feelings about him that made him feel more realistic and fully realized to me as a character. The chapter called Expiation, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that word right, that chapter stunned me. When I realized what was about to happen, I just felt this building sense of dread within me. I realized what was about to happen, and I was like, oh my God, no, 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 no. It was like a train crash that I couldn't look away from. It was so shocking and powerful. That chapter was absolutely amazing, and then how it ended, my God, it made me feel a lot of feelings. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Other characters in this book, I loved the relationship that Valentine and Noirtier had with each other. I thought that was really touching, their familial relationship. This book actually has a pretty explicit same-sex romance between two female characters. I was really surprised because obviously, you know, gay people have existed since the beginning of time, but Dumas basically makes it as explicit that they're lesbians as he can in a time where you can't really come out and say the word lesbian. At one point, he compares one of these two women to Sappho, which, in case you don't know, Sappho of Lesbos was a female poet who wrote poetry about other women, and that is where the terms sapphic and lesbian come from. So he was basically saying that they're lesbians as explicitly as he could have in this time period. So that was kind of like a pleasant surprise to actually see these two lesbian characters in this work of classic literature. He basically made it as clear as he could that they were in a same-sex relationship as he possibly could have in this time period. And you know what? I support them. I hope that they are living their best lesbian lives. And then Mercedes. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil her storyline, but she, to me, was really almost a tragic figure, and I feel like she deserved better. I will get sort of to that when I talk about the things about this book that I didn't like. Man, Mercedes, my heart really goes out to her. This book had so many compelling characters, and even though it's a large cast, Dumas does a really good job at making every character memorable. So to talk a little bit about what I liked and disliked about this book. If I had to give it a rating today, I would probably give it a 4.5 star. I do feel like this is a book that could potentially be an all-time favorite for me, but I have to see how it sticks with me in the years to come. I can't give it a full 5 stars at this moment because there were things that I disliked about it. But it was a really good book, and I would encourage you to read it if you are interested. Don't let its size intimidate you like it did for me. This book has a really compelling plot, and it is not going to be a very hard classic to read, in my opinion. I think most people are going to be able to follow a majority of what's going on. There may be words here or there or references that you don't get, but the plot is going to be pretty easy for you to follow. This book just touches on so much, and it was a very engaging read with a lot of drama. It had so much going on, and when it got good, it was really good. There were parts where I was fully sucked in and I just wanted to keep reading. Now, the things that I didn't like about it is I do think it was a bit slow to start, and there were parts of the book that I feel like could have been cut out. There were parts that weren't really necessary, particularly the scene where the Count is giving Franz hashish. When I was reading that, I was thinking to myself, what is happening right now? Why is this in this book? And apparently the reason it was in the book is because Dumas himself loved getting high, which is like kind of iconic behavior, not gonna lie. So he includes literally this whole passage talking about how amazing it is to get high, and it's like food of the gods, just because he enjoyed some substances, as is his right. And like, listen, could this book have been shorter? Yes. There were times where the dialogue was kind of restating things that had already been said. And one particular writing quirk of Dumas that I noticed repeatedly is that he will never just give you a number. So for example, instead of saying, he is a man of 26, he will say, he was a man of about 26 or 27. He will say, about 3 or 4 hours went by. Things like that, and I think that's just because he's trying to stretch this out as long as possible. Dumas, like many 1800s authors, was being paid by the line, so I respect his hustle. He was making this book as long as he possibly could so that he could get that money, and I respect that. If I was being paid by my publisher by the line, I too would try to be as long-winded as possible to make my money. So while I do think there were parts that could have been cut out, I respect his hustle. You get that money, Dumas. The other major complaint I have about this book is how the romance played out in the end. I will not spoil it, obviously, but I think the relationship between Dantes and the person that he ultimately decided he loved in the end was a relationship that is going to be, let's just say, slightly uncomfortable for a 21st century reader, and I do understand why Dumas made some of the choices that he did thematically, but I think the relationship that they have and the power dynamic between them is something that is not going to sit right with a 21st century person. It definitely gave me the heebie-jeebies a couple of times, especially seeing some of the language that his love interest uses to describe him. It just was kind of uncomfy for me as a 21st century person, and I think I understand what he was trying to go for, but it's an aspect of the book that is definitely not aged well. Those are the aspects of the book that is really holding me back from declaring this a 5-star and an all-time favorite, but by and large, it was a really entertaining book. I think it was well written, it had many plot twists and dramatic moments, and there were parts that were just so eloquently written, descriptions that were very vivid and beautiful. I also laughed sometimes while I was reading this book, particularly when Dumas was making tongue-in-cheek comments about Parisian high society and how those types of people act, how image conscious they are, and things like that. So there were parts that were genuinely beautifully written and genuinely funny, as well as plot twists that made me gasp and had my heart beating faster. So this has been my pretty laid-back, informal discussion of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. If you have read this book, I would love to hear from you in the comments and know what you thought of it. If you want to talk about spoilers a little more, you can do that, but put a spoiler warning in your comment for any people out there who haven't read this yet. I know that it's almost 200 years old, but still, let's just have some spoiler warnings in the comment section. That is it for me today, you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. It really does help my channel so much. If you're still here watching and you don't know what to comment, why don't you comment a mask emoji? Is there a mask emoji? Comment that down below, because my penguin cloth bound edition of The Count of Monte Cristo has masks on the cover. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and my social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.